Welcome back to Built to Ship, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with founders and product leaders shipping real AI products into the world. I'm your host, Tyler, co-founder at Voker, and I'm excited today to have Suraj on the podcast with me. He's a founding engineer and now co-founder of CompanyInsights.ai. They're a platform that helps enterprises transform unstructured data into secure conversational AI insights, and I'm sure we'll learn more about that. Suraj, great to have you on the podcast.
Hey, Tyler, I'm really honored to be on the podcast.
Of course. Yeah, no, glad to have you here. So maybe we can start out with your background. What were you doing before this role? Maybe what did you study and focus on before you started working with Company Insights?
Sure. So I have a background in computer science engineering from BITS Pilani, which is sort of an Indian Ivy League. And before Company Insights, I was working at a marketing tech startup in India that also leveraged AI to try and make B2B conversions smoother, frictionless, and just more intelligent.
Amazing. And so what led you from that role to working at Company Insights? Was there some crossover there in terms of the type of work you did before? Where did the idea come from?
Well, I guess I've always been fascinated about generative AI ever since my third year in college. I took a course called information retrieval, and that really kind of piqued my interest. Natural language processing, how do you understand it? How do you figure out what words are important, what words aren't important? And then the Gen AI boom happened, and then I'm looking at how information and access to said information is kind of getting democratized. More and more people have access to it. And truly, I believe that there's a lot of power in information because information lets people take wiser decisions and it kind of levels the playing field to people from all their diverse backgrounds. And yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of generative AI tools out there that can just kind of level the playing field and give everybody a fair shot.
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting time where we're seeing people with domain expertise in places other than comp sci that are able to build and use AI tools. So it sounds like that kind of motivated you to work and join the idea for Company Insights. Tell us a bit about Company Insights. What's your core product and who are the types of customers that you serve?
Absolutely. So CompanyInsights.ai is a conversational intelligence and knowledge management platform built for the enterprise and powered by agentic AI and personas, which sound complicated, but I'll get to those in a bit. Now, what we do is we're not just like every other RAG platform or ChatGPT LLM wrapper out there. Rather, we're like an entire ecosystem that kind of help organizations unlock the true and full potential of all the information they have and really serve it in an intelligent conversational interface that not only gives you access to the existing data, but helps you kind of convert the vast amounts of data that an organization has. And well, one of the main problems with most of the information and data that an organization has is it's been designed for humans, because up until now, it's been humans who are reading all of the flyers, the documents, the PDFs, the decks, and everything. But now suddenly it's AI and large language models which are trying to read it. And not all of the information that's out there, which companies have spent years and millions, if not billions, on, is not really being understood by AI in the way that it should. So
That's a
that
great
is
point. Yeah, I'd love to, maybe we can help make this even more clear for the audience. Do you have a concrete example? I think you bring up a really great point that obviously we design systems for humans and now it's a little different for LLMs, right? You see websites even nowadays have this like mode. There's like the human UI where you can scroll through and then you can click into the for AI or for agents and it just shows you some raw text and markdown. What's like a concrete example and analogy to that before for analytics data? Where's a place where, oh, the data would be structured this way for humans, but now we need to structure it that way for agents? Is there an example you could share?
Sure. So, I mean, right now I'm just going to grab an object. This is like a product. This is like facial wipes. And you can see that if I have this product on a catalog, now, unless there's an image recognition model or something that recognizes what it is and reads all the little lines over there and converts it into text, a model is not going to be able to grasp that. If an image of this product is just on your website, that image is completely missed by traditional parsers and traditional RAG and AI. A more concrete, or rather business oriented example is, you have these documents with a lot of flowcharts, you have these guidelines, and you have kind of these analytics documents, a lot of graphs, a lot of images, a lot of visual data, where the meaning is more based on where the data is present than the data itself. So what happens when you kind of convert that into text and feed it to an LLM in the traditional sense is you lose all of that information about where it is and what it means.
Love that. No, that's a great example, and so true. Yeah, I think to your point, we've kind of like made these visualizations so it's easy for humans to understand, but an LLM or an AI system like a traditional machine learning model would rather have the ones and zeros. I'm curious, what is the solution then? Is it going back to, those ones and zeros, or to those tables? I assume, let's say it's a graph of time series data about a stock price. It started out as a table with a date and the price of the stock, and then someone converted that into a graph. What are you guys doing there to help the LLM read it? Are you turning it back into structured data, like rows and columns, or is there something else that you do to take into account the visual aspects as well?
Well, we have a kind of an approach that involves us first auditing the data, and we see that we like to convert the information that's not in a LLM friendly format into an intermediate format we like to call AI ready format, the .ai, if you will. And it's mostly based loosely on Markdown, but slightly enhanced Markdown, because we have some sort of data enrichment and feature engineering going on, which just means that we look at the data apart from just storing the data itself or the information itself. We also store bits and pieces like, okay, what are we talking about? I know this piece of information is giving me the details about a laptop or a phone, but okay, in the bigger picture, what brand is it or what model is it? Where does it all fit in the big picture? And when you kind of break down documents for AI, which is called chunking, you kind of lose the relationship between the individual bit of information and the large document in general. Like, if you could show AI the entire 500,000 page document, that would be cool, but context windows aren't there yet. What we have now is we can show them small pieces, but it always helps to add like one or two lines about how that piece fits into the whole document as well. And that is one of the things we do. A couple other things are, we convert image data into more of a metadata. We add information about, okay, what the image is about. And, there's no shortage of metadata or additional information. We kind of smartly select and pick what can we add to the chunks so that the AI just gets the full picture.
Love that. Yeah, I think it sounds like what you're describing is what some people call context engineering, where you're deciding intelligently, number one, probably how do I chunk this data? But then once I've chunked it, which to your point, you did a great job of explaining, just means splitting up a large, piece of data into pieces that can fit into an attention span or a context window of an LLM. But on top of that, you want to give some information around, hey, this is, it's talking about a laptop, but it's not being sold by Lenovo. It's being sold by a reseller, for example. That might be interesting information that the AI wouldn't get out of that chunk. How do you actually do that translation? So you mentioned that it starts out in this, let's say, 50,000 page document with charts and graphs and written up for a human, maybe even for like someone to print out and read. How do you actually do that conversion? Does it take humans to go look at the report and turn it into data in a format that an LM can process, or do you have a programmatic way of doing it?
That's a great question, and one that we've been debating internally as well quite a bit. Right now, we do have a human in the loop, of course, because we want to make sure our clients get the best possible information possible. But we are working towards a completely autonomous, self-learning, self-healing document processing pipeline that can both process and compare the intermediate processed document to the original document, sort of like a diff, if you will, a Git
Hmm.
diff, and just make sure that all the information was carried over. And if it sees that a part of the information was not carried over, it goes back, it traces back the steps that happen in the ETL, and it kind of figures out, okay, what happened, why did it not go. It kind of replicates those exact conditions and then automatically makes edits into our parser.
That's great.
And we don't
Yeah. And just for the
we don't
audience, since you mentioned ETL,
Mhm.
that stands for extract, transform, load, which is just a sort of phrase for data pipelines. I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you're building towards this autonomous system. What's the biggest challenge? You said there's a debate internally of like, hey, can and how do we take humans out of the loop? What's the biggest challenge in that pipeline that makes it tough to not just use agents already?
Well, the tough part is it's very hard to predict how an AI is going to behave, especially when you change models, especially when you change prompts. We've noticed that there's some language that sounds pretty normal to a human being, but an AI or a large language model completely overthinks and goes off the rails. So we're always trying to make sure that we don't cause the AI to go crazy. And I guess the biggest challenge is, just the non-deterministic nature, where you just can't, which means you just can't predict that. Okay, if I put in A, I'm gonna get B. You don't know. If sometimes you put in A and you get a string of gibberish. So
Yeah, I think anyone developing AI systems can resonate with that. It's interest. It keeps you on your toes for sure. So you mentioned like this is the first step, which is taking this data that's made for humans and turning it into something that AI can read. Am I right in understanding that you also power intelligent conversations? What does that mean? Is this like I can now chat with a bot and get information about my AI or about my data through AI, or what is that? What does that user experience look like?
yeah, so after we have all of the knowledge stored, we make it accessible through a conversational platform. But what sets us apart from, traditional chatbots is it's not just like, you're asking questions and getting an answer. The platform kind of knows who you are. We like to approach this through the concept of personas. I know I mentioned this earlier. So what a persona is to us is sort of how you would divide up a business and identify all the business roles that make up an organization. So a persona to us tells us three things. Okay, who is the platform talking to? What is their role? What is their designation in industry? What are they doing? What are their job functions? How do they speak? The second part is, if an AI assistant was there to best assist them, then how should that AI assistant speak? Do they prefer more text? Do they prefer tables? Do they just want slides? What is the best way? What is the most useful way we can present all of this information that we have to make their life super easy? And the third thing is, what is the source of truth for them? Because and I'll give you an example. Suppose there's a huge organization, engineering team, business team. Now, if I'm asking a question about a product from the engineering team, most of the time I would want to query the technical spec docs or something like that. But if I'm asking a question from the business team, I would want the business version answer, maybe from the PRD or from the report that is being sent to management. So that's just one of the examples.
Yeah, that's a great example that helps illustrate. So it sounds like you have this personalization layer, which is, what's the persona of the person asking? How should they be given insights? Where should it come from? But how do they actually, maybe I missed this, but how do they actually get those insights? Do they chat with a bot and it can query that data based on their persona? It says, okay, I'm going to look up the PRD for this answer. And then it sends back, what is it? Is it text or does it create charts and graphs? And if so, how do you facilitate all of that?
So it is mainly a conversational platform, which means chat. You can chat with a system, and it will give you primarily text is what we support, but we are also supporting charts and images and basically anything that we can render in that chat window. So
And how
yeah,
do you
that
do
is
that?
what.
Because I think that is a challenge for a lot of people. How do they display information in a chat? So some folks take the approach of like have the AI write Python code to display a chart. Others have pre-built charts that the AI can configure, um, you know, filters or axes on based on like a tool call, and then yet others might just have like a library of images, like screenshots of charts. What approach do you guys take, and why'd you end up using that?
Well, we like to let the AI kind of make the chart or make the image, and in terms of rendering it in like the front end and interface, I mean, we do use, I believe we use Vercel, so we're using some components from there. We've built a couple of components of our own to kind of be able to handle that. And yeah, that is just how we kind of render stuff. We don't use any static images yet, but it is something that we can support. We do have the capability that if I'm asking a question about, like, a Q3 expense report or something, and there's a graph in the Q3 PDF, and I want to use that graph exactly, I can always tie that image to those chunks that belong to that answer, and then make sure that that image is the one that's picked up and shown.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, definitely sounds pretty flexible. Well, before we start to wrap up, I want to ask a question that I like to ask a lot of guests these days. A lot of companies are getting into production now with AI features. They now have agents in the wild, and they're now realizing that their users don't necessarily use the AI the way they expected. For example, you mentioned how you guys have large companies as customers. They have different departments, different personas. You may not realize that a business user was going to ask a question about sales and call it, what's our top line number? And they're really referring to revenue, whereas engineering, would just call it like, how much money did we make, for example.
Yep.
How do you keep track of like what different users are asking, how they're asking about it, if the agent's responding to their queries correctly? Do you have any frameworks in place? Is it digging through the logs manually? That's mostly what I hear folks say these days. Yeah, how are you approaching that monitoring and analysis of the live agents that you have in production?
So that's an excellent question, Tyler, and I'll answer it in two parts. One is how we prepare the data itself and how we query it. So unlike most RAG applications, we don't just stick to a semantic kind of semantic database, which is semantic means meaning. Based off of similar meaning, it finds similar information. We use a hybrid approach. We use both sparse, which means keywords, and a semantic approach. So that problem of, like, one concept being called in many different formats, that gets sort of taken care of over there. And then we have a proprietary re-ranking mechanism, which basically pulls in chunks from the keyword and the semantic only, and then kind of does a fusion and re-ranks everything to make sure we always end up with the most relevant part. Now, coming to the other side, which is how do we evaluate it, we have built a custom evaluation kind of module right now. In fact, that's the most recent thing we've been working on, trying to get
Nice.
most of the evals automated. And so we give the system, we use LLMs as a judge. We use like a bench of LLMs, if you will, and we have them all validate the answer. Obviously, for the RAG triads, the accuracy, the hallucination, completeness, relevancy, all of those. But we also evaluate our internal kind of precision and recall and all of those things, and we kind of break our evaluation into like two parts. First, for this query, did we retrieve absolutely all the information that should have been used to answer it? And okay, assuming we did do that, assuming we did retrieve absolutely everything that should have been pulled, did we construct the right answer after we retrieved everything? So we kind of break it down into a retrieval evaluation and a synthesis or generation evaluation.
I like that. By splitting it out there, you can really do a better job of troubleshooting and debugging. Maybe the correct information was pulled, but the summary is wrong, which means it's something with the LLM prompt, versus if the information retrieved is wrong, maybe that's something with like the RAG or the fusion, pattern, etc.
Yep.
Really fascinating. When it comes to, so that sounds like that's like the testing and evaluation of these production agents to ensure, you're hitting all the precision you want. What about if you want to understand, like, what are people using the product for? What are they asking about? How do you do that? Like, you're sitting there one day and you're like, I wonder how this customer's, what are their biggest questions? Is it about, third quarter financial data, or is it about how users are using the product? Do you have a way to get those kind of insights? What methods or processes do you use to like understand how people use the agents?
Absolutely. We have a usage analytics dashboard. In fact, we shipped that from day one. And
Nice.
what that shows you is it kind of clusters all of the questions that have been run on the platform into like the top 10 or top 20 topics. So it tells you exactly, okay, what are the things that people are asking most frequently? And it also gives you a breakdown of the most frequently used personas. So we have a couple of different views and splits. It shows you a pie chart, and it shows you like a table with the most frequent questions, number of questions, and yeah.
Awesome. That's great. And so I imagine you kind of log every conversation with some sort of logging tool, and then you run like a bulk batch job, on some frequency of like, okay, now do clustering on this data, find the common modes, and kind of highlight those themes. Is that correct, or anything I got wrong there?
Absolutely, absolutely. We do log everything, and there's a very specific reason for that, because we are very big on full traceability, auditability, and compliance, because it's inevitable that AI will get it wrong. We try for 99.9% accuracy, but when that 0.1% happens, we want our customers to feel safe that they can still diagnose and kind of trace, okay, I got a wrong answer. Where did the wrong answer come from? What pieces of information contributed to this wrong answer? And where did those pieces of information come from? So there's a complete auditability right to this, from the source to the intermediate to what the LLM thought, and all the way up to the final answer.
Amazing. Well, thanks again for your time and for sharing, so many great insights about how to build a successful AI system. Everyone's learning. We're all figuring it out together. So the more that folks share their methods, the more it helps the whole community. I want to put your website up on the screen real quick, CompanyInsights.ai.
Yep.
And while I scroll through, maybe share a bit about who should reach out to you guys, who's a good fit for your product, and how can they follow along?
Absolutely. And I will preface this by saying this is our old website. A new one is coming as soon as next week. So
Exciting.
please don't judge us for the website. We've been focusing on our engine. And yeah, so who should reach out to us? Well, CEOs and decision makers are already reaching out to us when they want their vast mountains of data to work for them, not against them. So if you're an organization that has a lot of data, and you want an intelligent, completely auditable, and secure RAG system on top of it, which actually understands your brand voice, then you can reach out to us, because generic AI dilutes your brand voice that you've spent years and millions of dollars creating, but we ensure that the essence of your brand stays intact in the answers that we provide.
Amazing. That's CompanyInsights.ai. And for those listening, a reminder that next week there'll be a new website to check out. Well, thanks again for joining us and sharing about your journey over there, and your tips and tricks for building these AI systems. I'm looking forward to the new website launch and keeping in touch. Thanks again, Suraj.
Thank you, Tyler.
Have a good one. Bye now.
Bye-bye.